This video is sponsored by NewType. They're one of the largest online hobby stores where you can get your hobby kits, tools, and everything you need. Link in the description. Check them out. What's up GFam, this is Justin and welcome to Tutorial Tuesday. Today we are going to talk about how to paint, but for beginners. It's gonna be a long one, so let's get going. So step 1 to painting, it will be priming. So basically primer is a lacquer-based primer and some are acrylics as well. But no matter what it is, a primer's job is to help paint stick to the parts. Other than that, having a neutral color primer like gray color really helps to identify the flaws between your parts and something like that. Also, having a gray primer will really help you to ease out the transition when you're transitioning from a dark part to a light part. For example, if you have like a dark part or a black part that you would like to change the color to white color, then it's best if you put on a coat of gray primer to ease out the transition so that you don't have to paint so much white on it. So one more thing that primer does is that it really helps the paint to stick to the part itself. So when you're masking and you're unveiling the mask itself, you don't have to worry about paint following up your masking tape. So your paint job wouldn't be ruined just because of masking. Last but not least, you can do primer on a spray can or airbrush or even hand paint. But today we're just going to be focusing on two types of painting, which is airbrush and spray cans. So spray cans, they are the easiest to learn and easiest to master as well. Obviously, the cost itself, it wouldn't be so much compared to airbrushing unless you're buying like a ton of spray cans. Other than that, to start spray canning, there's literally no setup required. You just have to go outdoors and start spraying, or just find somewhere with good ventilation and you can start spraying already. And there's a lot of myths and doubts about like spray cans. They can't be as good as airbrush, or the finish itself, it can't be as good. But no, okay, that's not the case, because Mr. Nico Tejeda, which is the 2019 Canadian World Champion GBWC, he doesn't even airbrush, he only does spray paints. I mean, like, talk about results, bro. So remember that you can achieve world-class results with spray cans, okay? But you gotta make sure that they are hobby grades, they are specially made for hobbies. You can use some of the spray cans from like hardware stores and stuff like that. I can guarantee you that the result won't be as fine, it won't be as smooth as the one specially designed to be used on the hobby kits. One of the cons with spray can is that you can't really mix the colors together, you can't mix it like airbrush, and obviously you will have less control over where you're painting. Because on spray cans, you're literally just spraying out. The PSI is the same, the air pressure is the same. You can't really control how much paint is coming out or how little paint is coming out. And one last thing about spray can is that it's impossible to pre-shade, at least to my knowledge. I haven't tried pre-shading with a spray can before. I think that is pretty ridiculous, but you can try it and let me know down in the comments below whether you have done it or not. Now let's move on to airbrush. So airbrushing is kind of not so easy. Okay, it's easy to learn but very difficult to master. It is hard to set up before you paint and it is hard to clean up after you paint. But once you have mastered the airbrush techniques, all the tips and tricks, and everything nooks and crannies, it's very easy for you to achieve amazing results only with an airbrush. So because you can mix all the paints, pre-mix all the paints together and to be used on your airbrush, it's not like spray cans where everything came in the can. You can't really can it yourself, right? And you have 100% control of how much paint, how thick it is, how thin it is. You want to do pre-shading, you want to control the size of it, like the nozzle size. Everything is controllable with airbrush. That's why I said it's so hard to master, because there's so much to it. So now we have generally looked at both spray cans and airbrush. You gotta decide what you want to do, all right? Because airbrush is gonna be a little bit more expensive because you need more equipment to support airbrushing. So spray cans are really easy. Before you start, just submerge them into warm water for like 10 to 15 minutes, and then after that, shake really vigorously, very well, and then just start spraying. That's it. And when you're spraying, remember, spray light and easy, fast multi-coats, okay? And keep a distance between your part and your spray can so that your paint doesn't end up too thick. You can spray multiple coats with like 1 or 2 minutes in between them, and then spray it on until you're satisfied with the result, and then just leave them to be fully dry in 1 or 2 hours. And if you made a mistake with your paint job, it's easy to clean up with a lacquer thinner. That's it, just use lacquer thinner, put on a tissue, and then you can wipe it off just like that. Airbrush is a little bit complicated, but it's really fun to do. Airbrushing is all about ratios of the paint. If the ratio of the paint is not correct, then your airbrushing experience might not be smooth. You might get webbing, you might get problems when you're spraying out the paint, or air is coming out but paint is not coming out. Stuff like that could happen. Okay, so to do that, to get my ratios correct, I use a digital kitchen scale. That may sound crazy, but I don't use measuring cups, I don't use pipette or anything. I use pipette only for thinners because to get them out of the bottle is kind of hard, so I use a pipette. But other than that, a scale is all you need because of this formula. 1 gram equals to 1 millimeter. You gotta remember that. So no matter what kind of paint you have there, for example like acrylic, lacquer, or even enamel, start with 10 parts of paint and 3 parts of thinner. And then slowly add more thinners into your paint. Slowly, like for example 3 parts is not enough, then 4, then 5, then 6, until you get the milky consistency. That is the one that we're looking for airbrushing. For example, right here I have a Tamiya paint, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 5 millimeters of paint into my cup, and then I'm going to add 1.5 millimeter of thinner into the paint and stir them well. If I can't get the consistency right, I'm gonna add one more part, which is 0.5 millimeter, and then I'm going to add another one if it's still not enough. Just get the milky consistency and then you are golden. So you got your paint mixed up, and then now it's time to move on to the airbrush itself. So for airbrush, it's really important that you connect everything and make sure that there's no air leaking between your airbrush and your compressor. And to start things off, I always like to set my compressor to 15 psi and then slowly move up to higher psi when it's not enough. And then before I start painting anything, I always pour some water into my airbrush to start spraying. Not start praying, you start spraying. Okay. I always pour a little bit of water before anything else to start spraying, to start to get the feel of the pressure, and I use my glove as a test bed for my pressure. So the reason for the water is that to get the feel of the pressure that you're spraying on, and then also to really smooth out, to make sure that your airbrush is not clogged up by your previous paint job or anything else, right? Or by a manufacturer defect or anything. So start with water first so that you don't waste any of your paint. And then it's time to pour the paint into the airbrush, which is the the moment of truth. Once you put it in, start spraying a little bit on your glove first to see how it feels, and then remember, push for air, pull for paint. So you gotta remember the motion of pushing and pulling, pushing and pulling, pushing and pulling. Keep on practicing until you're really familiar with it. Sleep with this kind of pattern, eat with this kind of pattern, and then one day you will be an airbrush master. So, and to paint an airbrush is generally just like a spray can, other than the distance itself doesn't have to be that far anymore. With airbrush, you can get as close as you want, as long as the PSI is not too high, so that the paint itself is not rushing out that causes the paint job becoming too thick. So with airbrush, it's all about patience, okay? You can airbrush with a lower PSI, and then you get a little bit of paint coming out. You can put on multiple coats to achieve the best results. Well, first, let me tell you something. Plan your paint job. Plan your paint job. Literally plan it out, okay? It's best if you can go light to dark instead of dark to light, because from light to dark, you don't have to clean up that much to change your paint, right? And even if you clean them up, it doesn't have to be that thorough, because if your next color is darker than your previous one, then obviously that color is going to eat up that colors, right? So for airbrush cleaning, I use this airbrush cleaner from Tamiya. There are a lot of manufacturers that is doing airbrush cleaners as well. One from Vallejo is really good. Mr. Hobby is really good as well, so go check them out. So to clean up your airbrush is really easy. First, get some airbrush cleaner and then just put them into your paint cup. Stop swiveling them around like wine, and then after that, pour the excess into another container to be safe. You can save. Do you know that you can save your airbrush cleaner to be used on later to clean up other parts of your airbrush? Yeah, that's usable. So don't waste it by dumping it anywhere else. So save it in a container like me, and then after that, I'll use a tissue. Just wipe the inside of the paint cup, and then I'll put a couple drops more of the airbrush cleaner into the paint cup, and then just start spraying the excess out that is stuck inside the airbrush itself. And this is how I switch color every single time. Sometimes you need to repeat the steps 2 or 3 times, but it doesn't matter. Stop thinking that you'll be wasting your airbrush cleaner or anything. You can always save them by spraying them into the container itself. And then if you have finished painting, just use the same steps to clean up your airbrush and they're good to go. Tip number 1, if airbrushing is really too expensive for you, it's like too much of an investment, then try spray cans. Spray cans can achieve just as good as a result as long as you have known how to master them. And it's also important to grasp on the concept of constantly painting your kits, constantly doing the customizing part of your kits, and then get used to the concept. And once you're ready to jump into airbrush, then only try to invest in a cheap airbrush set. If you're experiencing webbing, which is like painting halfway and then the paint started to gush out instead of like coming out smoothly, it's time to probably consider adding a little bit more thinner and make your paint a little bit more thinner, or just check the nozzle head to see if there's any paint dried up and stuck over there. And if all of that is not working, then try fixing your PSI. Maybe it's too high. But the point is you need to learn how to self-diagnose the problem. Like for example, you got a webbing problem, and then the first thing what you're gonna do, I'm gonna try thinning down the paint. If that doesn't work, maybe the nozzle head is stuck, so I need to check it out as well. And if that is not stuck, maybe it's the air pressure being too high. So you gotta start to learn how to self-diagnose with these kind of steps. Okay, and all these can only be learned through experience. I can teach you anything you want, but if you have never experienced this kind of faults, you have never made this kind of mistakes before, you will never truly learn. If you're totally new with airbrush, please start practicing with water first instead of paint. Okay, don't waste your paint. Don't get too excited, gushing, jumping in. I want to paint now. No, don't do that. Okay, come on, please. Start practicing with water. Get a grasp on how, get familiar with the concept of using an airbrush, the fingers, the gestures, the distance itself, the pressure. Get used to it first with water, okay? Instead of paint. Don't waste your paint unless you're a millionaire. Unless you have a lot of money, you want to waste it on paint, go ahead. No worries on that. Wear gloves, wear masks, any kind of protection you can, because paint and the fumes can be toxic. If you don't have any alligator clips to hold on to your parts while you're painting, don't worry, just use a stick or popsicle sticks or any kind of sticks, and then just put a little bit of thumbtacks at the end of it, and then just stick it up to your paint, to your part, and it will still hold it together. Last tip of the day is to always clean your airbrush after every usage, because if you don't clean your airbrush, something is gonna get clogged up inside. It will start breaking up and the needle will be affected. It's not well polished anymore and stuff like that. So you don't want that to happen, okay? Respect your tools, take care of your tools, and your tools will take care of you too, by not breaking, obviously. So this video is only a general knowledge for those who want to start painting their kits. Okay, doesn't matter whether it's spray canning or airbrushing or hand painting. Now you know what is the ins and the outs. So if you guys want to know more about painting, a more in-depth, a more detailed video on spray canning or airbrushing, which one you want to learn first, comment down below and let me know, airbrush or spray can, because I don't do hand painting other than details. So let me know down in the comments below which one you want to know. Other than that, if you have any emergencies or any kind of immediate questions that you need answers to, feel free to join my Discord server by supporting me on Patreon, because I do video calls, I do voice calls, I have personal time dedicated to my Discord Patreon supporters. So if you guys have any problems, let me know. Let's do a video call, let's do a voice call instead. Anyway, that's it for this video, and if you like this video, please share with your friends who want to start painting but didn't know how or doesn't know where to start. So it will be a great help for the channel. And subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell button beside to get notified every time I post a new video. This is Justin signing off, and I hope you guys learned something today. Bye bye.